Welcome to the Birth Lounge Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts, support your mental health, and learn the tips and tricks that thousands of parents have used to craft their ideal birth. We will answer all of your questions, the scary ones and the weird ones, to help calm your fears and feel confident going into your birth. I'm going to help you redefine what birth and motherhood looks like and how to embrace your journey. I've intentionally crafted a list of experts to help you navigate pregnancy, explore your birth options, and plan for postpartum so that it can be a time of soaking in your tiny human. We're going to go there on all the hard topics so that you can dive deep into finding your confidence and freeing yourself from fears around birth. With over 10 years of experience in family education and a master's degree in human development and family studies, I created this podcast as a way to share the resources parents need to make educated and informed decisions about their care in pregnancy and childbirth. This is a birth community driven by evidence-based information and research in hopes to help you explore your options, understand your rights, and know what choices you have along the way when it comes to birth and beyond. I'm your host, HeHe. Now let's get to the good stuff. Frances, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you. I just told everybody how much of a long time coming this was and how we met actually earlier this. We followed each other for a while, but we met
Yeah.
earlier this year, not in person, but over FaceTime. And then obviously summer took off and kids and life and just business
Oh,
owner.
yeah.
And so I'm stoked to have you here today. I'm very excited for our conversation. And obviously we were chatting before we hit record, and these conversations can get really deep and they're multi-layered. Guys, as you're listening, if either one of us say something that rubs you the wrong way, just take a deep breath and remember, these are multi-layered conversations. Everyone has a story and a side, and we're not here to offend anybody. Whether you are a patient or a doula or a provider or a midwife, you work in a hospital or home birth setting, we really are. Our goal is to have us all working cohesively together. And sometimes that means talking about uncomfortable things and things that kind of make us feel big feelings. And one of my favorite people to follow online is you, Frances, because you have those hard conversations, but you never make me feel like I'm being judged in them. You just say, hey, this is a problem and we should have a conversation about it. And I want you to know you're safe to do that, but I am not going to shy away from pointing out the things that are wrong just because they make us feel uncomfortable. And that is a sentiment that I identify with so deeply. So I'm so excited to have you. So after that long-winded welcome to
Thank
the show.
you. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So why don't we start with that advocacy piece? Your Instagram and TikTok handles are based around advocacy. You are
Yes.
a mom advocate. It's your identity. It's the education that you provide for people. Talk to us about what you have noticed as an advocate about the culture of labor and delivery in the last maybe 5 to 10 years. What kind of shifts are we seeing that are A, really important, but B, are pretty pivotal, and we have a chance either to make it go really good, or if we don't do it right, things may not go so great.
Yes. I would say one of the biggest things I'm seeing is a pushback on asking questions
Okay.
inside the birth suite, which is odd because questions are encouraged in almost every other department in the hospital. Like when you're in the ER, they want you to have questions. They want to make sure when you go home exactly what you can do, what you can't do before you go in like your primary care physician. But for some reason, mothers and parents and partners asking questions is seen as almost doubt to the person
Challenging.
you're asking, like challenging their education, challenging their credentials, challenging hospital policy. When it's no, I think the average person is just, I want to know if there are any consequences to me doing this. Truly, I don't know what else mothers are thinking about, to be honest. Like every single time I've ever asked a question in the birth suite, it's always been like, okay, how is this going to affect my baby? Is this going to affect my baby? Is this going to make my baby happy? It's going to make what's going to happen? So
Mhm.
I've definitely seen this pushback in like physically inside the hospital. And then in the change of culture as far as social media is I'm seeing a lot more nurses and midwives get on the scene, which I think is awesome. I think doulas have always had a really strong presence on social media in the birth space. A lot of that has been blogs, but I love to see them on TikTok and on Instagram. I love it. I love it. I love it. So one thing that I'm seeing now that birth and the birth conversations on social media just aren't primarily parents and doulas, which doulas are a support person. They work with the mom. They are the mom superhero number one ally, right? So now that these two aren't the only like voices, we have nurses and doctors and midwives on the scene, and they're bringing a more of a we wish you guys would do this while we're still learning how to even just use our own voice. So that's really tough. It's like you're trying to teach your kid how to tie a shoe, but then at the same time, you're also trying to teach them a song. Like that's really hard. It's like I'm still learning this skill and you're talking about this. So I definitely think before when we have conversations about birth, it was really just be happy that you made it, be happy that you have a baby, be happy that you're leaving the hospital. And now moms want more. They want to leave without the birth trauma. They want to leave feeling like they knew what was happening. Maybe not understand everything that was happening, but knew it was going to happen. And I just see this just like big, almost like stalling out that we're seeing from some healthcare providers because it's seen as like a challenge, but it's no, we just want to know what's
It's an
happening.
opportunity. It's a call in from your patient
Yes.
to say, I have never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know that I need more information and I have questions. And so I'm going to do it the best that I can. And I hope that you're receptive to that. And that healthcare provider, in my opinion, has an obligation to be receptive to that or to be honest with that patient and say, you know what, I am not the right provider for you, but I'm going to make sure that my front desk staff gives you a list of names of people who are taking clients that they think you may be a better fit for because you're asking for a VBAC and I don't do those. You don't want to have a C-section and you really feel passionately about breech birth and I disagree as your provider because you don't want to be induced and that is my preference. I really don't allow as a provider, quote unquote, allow people to go past 40 weeks. There can be a ton of reasons that you disagree with your provider. And I think that part of that disconnect is that idea, and both sides hold it, that the authority figure in that room is the doctor. And I don't hold that same belief. I think that they are equal powers, but if we have to sway the scale, then that mom or that patient, that parent is ultimately the decision maker. You should, though, hopefully you have access to, and we don't always. Hopefully, we have a provider that we have that trust with, and we can lean on them when we need. We can ask them those questions. But if you are a provider that can't provide that for that person, just be honest with them and let them know that. Don't struggle with that power dynamic because
Yeah.
that person deserves to be on top of the totem pole. This is their birth.
100%. And I did want to add this one thing that I think fits is I think a lot of providers put the education and to inform mothers what's going to happen to their body on the nursing staff. So we'll ask questions in that during our prenatal visits. So what do I expect? What do I do at the hospital? And they're like, you just need to show up at the hospital and the nurses will tell you what to do. And then I think a lot of people, because they're getting all this new information from friends and family and social media that's ask questions, be empowered, have a birth plan. And then we're going and we don't necessarily have a lot of information. We're like, oh, I'm just going to have this conversation with the nursing team and it's going to be great. And it's going to be, we're going to get out the drawing board. And they're like, whoa, I'm expecting you to get into the nightie, get into bed, let me start that IV and that Pitocin, sit back and bounce on that ball or lay back on your back. And so there's just, I personally always, always make sure my doctor has a conversation with the nursing staff about my expectations, my concerns, and my fears before I set foot in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
That is a small task to ask your OBGYN or your midwife to do with a $15,000 to $30,000 procedure. Because at the end of the day, this is you're getting billed for a medical procedure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with
Whether it's a
anything else,
vaginal birth or a C-section doesn't matter.
yeah,
You're still
doesn't
getting
matter.
billed for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I'm being billed. I'm being billed for an SUV. When you go buy an SUV, you have questions. You have things that you want. And so I feel like that is a really important piece that I think is causing a lot of miscommunication and a kind of a culture shift between nurses and patients, and then like midwives and doulas trying to have more like gentle, calming births. They're just like, we have different barriers with how the hospital systems are set up.
Yeah.
And then we're not necessarily having those crucial conversations that we need to be having with our providers. Like, you shouldn't walk into the hospital and not know that hospital doesn't allow you to eat during labor. Like,
Yeah.
the doctor, they choose what hospitals they perform their births at. So that's something that you should know 4 months pregnant. Okay, my hospital doesn't do VBACs at all. Can't eat during labor. You can only have one support person in the room. Like, that should not be a conversation that you're having in tears with a nurse. But I want my mom and my
In
husband
labor.
in labor. No. So I definitely think, and that's not like a dig or a diss to doctors, but every time I talk to doctors and they ask me like, what could I do different to my practice? I'm like, please let your mothers know the current policies for eating in labor, having visitors and support persons in labor, with the doula policy as at the hospital, because some hospitals don't count your doula as a support person. Some do. So it's okay, I can only have 2 people in the room. You're counting my doula as one. Well, I wanted my sister and my husband. I shouldn't find this out on D-Day. So that's definitely, I think, something that's important.
I find that, and this is frustrating, and I don't know that there's anything that we can do better. I guess, yeah, now that I say that out loud, we have to remove doctors and nurses being afraid that their livelihood is going to be threatened if they truly properly consent someone and if they truly properly give someone the option to say no. Because I find a lot of times on the internet, it's like doctors and nurses, and I love them. Some of my good friends are L&D nurses or doctors or OBGYNs, midwives. I have great friends that are educators there. But if you work in a system, you are beholden to that system at some point, and there are some things that they will not say. They will not go on to educate their patients about X, Y, and Z because they do feel like there is a line in the sand of what you can and can't say, whether your job is going to be threatened or not. And for me as a doula, that is one of the most special things that I hold in my role, is that I am beholden to no one except my client. And I will always tell you the truth, whether it's good, it's bad, it's ugly, it's scary, it's joyous. I'm always going to tell you the truth. And I'm going to think of every single possibility and option I can possibly present to you so that you can make the best decision that you can make with what we have in this moment, in this situation.
100%. 100%. And I think that's why doulas can be really powerful if you have access to a doula or you can afford a doula. I had a doula, but that's something I saved for a year. I am definitely come from we are working class, me and my husband. That's something I definitely had to plan for. But I think I love me a good nurse. I love nurses. I love nurses. I love me a good doctor. I
Same.
love me a good midwife. Love it. I do think that for a really long time, I think their level, their outlook on what a successful birth is breathing mom, breathing baby.
Yeah.
And I think moms are like, I don't want to leave traumatized. And that really is a low bar. That's not asking for a lot. I want to leave with a breathing baby and I want to be breathing, but I also want to not have had like my water broken and no one asked my consent. I don't want to feel like I wanted skin to skin and there was no medical reason for me not to, but I just didn't get that opportunity. So I feel like I understand coming from a place where you're like, listen, I got 6 patients, like my goal, like breathing mom, breathing baby. I get that. That is valid. But it's like, I would be really scared to see where we're at in society if the bar was only that you go into something and that you survive.
That is what the bar is right now in maternity.
Right
We
now, we
look
need to.
around and
But
see
imagine if that
it's
was the bar
bad.
when you sent your kid to school. Your kid's alive. Yeah, but you hit my kid, or but you made them stand in the corner for 4 hours, but they're alive.
You
That
didn't feed them the whole day they were at school.
yeah, that merely being alive should never be the standard for anything. And sadly, at least for a lot of Black women, that is a standard. We're just like, we don't want to die. I don't want to die. That's my number one thing. And I want us to get to the point where Black women aren't afraid to die, Indigenous women aren't afraid to die, and afraid that their kids are going to get taken away, that white women aren't afraid to make noise or be seen as difficult because they're asking questions. I want people who feel like, hey, I know what I want. I can do this. There's no medical reason why I can't have a little bit of chicken broth. I've been going at this for 18 hours. I'm starving. I just wish we could get to a point where we just use the most up-to-date medical fact-based information, but also remember that when a woman in the United States goes into a hospital, she is indeed paying for her service. And whenever anyone else goes into any other department and they're paying for her service, the bar isn't, let's just make sure they don't die. You would never hear a doctor or nurse tell someone who came out of knee surgery, at least you still got that leg. No. Did you fix it? So we gotta like
We gotta raise the bar. we gotta ask some more questions here, people. Okay. Okay, so you hit on a couple of different topics that I want
I'm sorry.
kind of no, don't apologize. Oh my gosh, my brain is going wild. You talked about white women using their voice and not being afraid to shake things up and call out these things. So I try to do that. And my approach is not always perfect. I'm the first to admit it. Look, I'm human and I also have never been in this space before. I am
Right.
running alongside everybody else. I usually say the quiet part out loud because that's usually the part we need to talk about to get over
Right.
the humps that we're facing. And for me, I would love to lead those uncomfortable conversations because I'm tired of looking at our house burning down. I'm ready to move to a place where we're not burning down. So if that means having uncomfortable conversations, come take a seat. The faster we talk about this, the faster we can fix it. I also experience an immense amount of self-questioning and just I wake up some days and I'm like, am I the problem? Am I making a difference at all? Am I causing problems? It seems every time I say something, somebody has something bad to say about it, or they have a counter argument. Not that I'm opposed to conversation, but the amount of people who holler out, you're wrong, and it's because of this, I'm just so committed to fixing things. It gets really hard to wake up and bang your head against the same wall every day and not question, goodness, is what we're doing actually making a difference?
Yes. The reason why people are saying that to you, what I think is, it is very hard when someone presents to you it didn't have to happen that way.
Ugh.
That is a very tough pill to swallow. Sometimes it is easier to just think, okay, there was no other option. There was no other way this could have been. And if it was the other way, it would have been better for me. And I'll give you an example because that sounds really weird. So I'm neurodivergent. I was diagnosed by third grade. A lot of millennials are neurodivergent and they're getting diagnosed as adults. And a lot of people believe if I was just diagnosed younger, I would be so functioning and all these problems I wouldn't have. And wait a minute, we're millennials, right? So I was diagnosed early, but back then it was assimilate, not treat. So I got the diagnosis early, and I'm very grateful that I'm grateful that I went through puberty knowing the way my brain works is not just I was born that way. But it's like when you present, hey, you can ask a question. Hey, you can ask for less Pitocin. Hey, you can ask, is this C-section medically necessary? it makes people hearing that think for a second, I could have had something different. I could have had something better. And that is scary. That is traumatizing. And that is sad. So it's not that you're the problem, but if I never, there is some peace to that. There's peace to that, to being like, you know what? My life isn't the way that I necessarily want it to be, but I didn't know I had ADHD until I was 42. That is my truth. Then what if I did get an early diagnosis and maybe things would have been worse because my parents would have tried to treat it out of me instead of accommodate me. And I think that's what happens is we look at things from today. We don't always look at things from as it actually is or as it actually was. Like there's not some like magic that's going to change the way that something has already happened. But when you challenge that, and I stopped doing this, I found out my emergency C-section was not an emergency C-section. It was an elective C-section. And that took me months to get over because I was told, you need this, the baby's heart, like the baby's side. They sent it home. You'll be fine if I share this. Husband's crying in the corner. Like we were worried. I get my medical notes. I look at my paper because I always do that whenever I go anywhere. I always get my copy of my medical notes after so I can see what was written down. Elective C-section. Nothing about emergency, nothing about heart rate, nothing about baby's size, nothing. And I had a friend I was talking to, and she's had an emergency C-section. I was like, get your medical notes from the hospital. They will give you a free copy and read what it says. And she called me and she was like, it says elective. And she had already had 2 more C-sections since then because she is in an area that's like once a C-section, always a C-section. And I'm telling you, we are here to prevent this. We are not here to keep people from using fact-based information. We are not here to empower people to fight with nurses. We are not here having these conversations to empower people to think of a 40-list birth plan to just annoy you. We're not here to spread misinformation. What we're saying is, when we leave the hospital, we have to physically and emotionally deal with the consequences of whatever our birth was. So do whatever you can do in your power to not contribute to negative consequences that could have been prevented. That's all. That's our only goal. That is the only goal of the doula. That's the only goal of HeHe. That's the only goal of me. No one is trying to purposely make the birth space difficult. But if we have to be uncomfortable, so informed consent, respect, and survival are important, then we're going to have to make a new pie because just surviving ain't it anymore. Like we're done. That is so 1997. We're not doing that anymore.
So I was just talking to my therapist about this, so I'm currently working on my responses and reactions to people when I feel very triggered. I'm working on taking a deep breath, and I'm working on believing that person did not intentionally hurt me. Although sometimes it's no, they literally did try and hurt my feelings there. They were trying and they succeeded a lot of times.
Not the worst.
I am working on this. And so for my therapist, we were talking about a scenario, and I was in the birth room and I had said something to a client, and it was a true evidence-based statement. And the nurse came back and told that client that was wrong. My response to that was to ask that nurse to provide her source for that. And it wasn't the time or place. And I wish I hadn't have done it. And although I was right, I do wish I had handled it a little differently. And that's what I was talking to my therapist about. She asked me if I would regret speaking up wrongly or not speaking up at all more. And I said not speaking up at all. I said I will always want to try and do it the wrong way because I can learn better in the future and do it differently. But you will never catch me dead in a birth room not speaking up because I'm afraid that people are not going to like me, or I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm afraid that I might hurt that nurse's feelings or bruise that doctor's ego. That is not what I'm there for. I will always speak up. I don't always promise to get it right. I'm going to try. I will try 100% of the time to get it right. I'm gonna fail. Some situations are brand new. I can't always go into a birth and have always been in that situation before. Similar situations for sure. Similar advocacy situations for sure. But sometimes you do get caught off guard and you don't always respond correctly. But I think that it is very important to stand up throughout that discomfort regardless, especially as a doula
100%.
and a nurse and a colleague. So if you're an OBGYN listening and you're like, gosh, I just have so many different thoughts in my other OBGYN colleagues, it's worth speaking up and saying, I don't think that is right, or hey, that was not consensual.
Yes. And okay. Yes, 100%. And
And
no, and yes, I literally have had that same exact thought. And I feel like if doctors and nurses, when they can, when it feels emotionally safe for them and it's in the right settings, that is the biggest fight against misinformation. If women feel comfortable going to the hospital and they feel that the hospital is safe, you will, because that's what I see on social media. A lot of doctors and nurses are just like, we just don't want you guys doing things that are unsafe. We just don't want you guys doing things that are unsafe. We want you to be safe. Go to the hospitals. If you don't risk out, go to a birthing center. We want you to be safe. We want you to be safe. And I'm a big advocate of home birth if you have the tools you need. But they're not understanding, if you don't feel comfortable asking your coworker of 5 years to stop telling patients or stop spreading certain misinformation or saying things that are his or her opinion as hospital policy, what makes you think that hospital is in a safe environment for a patient to speak up for themselves? You guys are creating the hospital environment. I didn't create this environment. But really think about that. They're just like, if patients just tell us, just talk to us. It's like, you guys don't talk to each other. I remember, like, it was my second birth. I was there it took me 71 hours to get that little stinker out. And it was like hour 29. And by then I knew exactly what nurses liked each other, what nurses liked the OBGYNs, what nurses didn't like what nurses didn't like student doctors. Like, you pick it up. You're just laying there.
Yep.
And so I think my wish is that, because there's like nurses like Nurse Hillary and Nurse Cindy and Nurse Jen, I don't think they're the norm. And I think a lot of nurses don't like the culture that they're in. But to think that someone coming into this brand new to a hospital is gonna feel empowered to speak up and say everything that's on their mind is wild. Like, why would I?
When they do, they get pushback. And it circles right back to what you were saying
Yes.
about then they're seen as challenging. And if you're Black, you're combative. And it's like
Yep.
angry Black woman thing. And it's no, I'm literally just trying to understand what my options are and what you guys are trying to recommend. And I want to
Yes.
make sure I feel okay with it. I don't want to say yes to one thing and then you include 15 things in that. And all of a sudden I'm being wheeled back for a C-section. I have no idea how we even got here. I agreed for a
Yes.
cervical check.
Yes. I think what's really hard is that Black women we are afraid of the trope that is placed on us, which is being an angry Black woman, being combative, not being a bad mother, having this very high pain tolerance, and honestly not caring about our babies. There's very awful stereotypes that are very damaging. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of white women, they are afraid to come off as argumentative or combative, but coming off as agreeable has given them social currency, which they benefit from. So being that agreeable, calm, because in one way I see birth mothers having that socialization and it being a negative because they don't feel empowered to speak up for themselves. But on the other end, I've also seen doctors, midwives, nurses, and doulas use that same currency to abuse their power. Doctor, I don't know why this patient's so upset. I simply told her that we would like to increase her Pitocin, or we would like to talk about having a C-section. But that's not what she said. What she said was, this baby's taking too long. You need to sign these papers so we can get things going. But it's if you look like me and someone's, I don't know what happened. Like, I was so calm, because there's currency in that. There's social currency in that. And I think that's why it's really important that we have conversations about the intersectionality of interpersonal communications. But I also think that it would be very helpful if white women would liberate each other and actually mean it. Like, when you say, listen, if you're feeling pain, you push that button. If you need me, you ask me. If you have a question, you ask me. But when that 26-year-old white first-time mom is, hey, these contractions are too strong, I would like to turn down the Pitocin. Don't yell at her. Don't get mad at her. But then it's, okay, if I'm agreeable and I'm kind, at least people won't be mean to me. So there's this very complex cycle that's going on that happens within the white community when it comes to conversation, when it comes to being agreeable. And then there's this mini microaggression that's going on between Black mothers and predominantly white healthcare systems, which is, I'm going to be as agreeable as possible because I don't want you to think I'm angry, and I don't want you to feel attacked, and I don't want you to hurt me. And so both mothers are being extremely agreeable and feel very small and powerless, but for very different reasons. And it's going to take a lot of honest conversations and unpacking to fix this culture. And I think doctors and nurses are very well aware of it. And they're just as responsible for breaking that down. I hope that wasn't too deep.
Or no, too much. I'm spiraling. No, I love it. So
I didn't mean too deep. I wasn't trying to like.
No, not at all. Don't apologize. These are the conversations that we need to be having, Frances. And these are the conversations that I don't know how to lead. These aren't the conversations I have every day. So that's why I have experts on like you. So thinking about that social currency is wild. So how do we move through that? What do some of those awkward conversations look like? If I'm a white doctor or a white nurse and I go into a Black woman's room, should I just right off the bat acknowledge, hey, we don't look alike, and I know our lived experiences are probably very different, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. I am on your team. I'm going to listen to you. You just said everyone says that, and then we get treated differently. So is the kicker really to say it and then actually follow through? And there's no way to build that trust until you prove yourself. Like, she says she's going to listen to me. She does. She says she's on my side. She stood up to the doctor for me. So she is that the end of it?
I have a very hard time believing people. First, if as a Black woman, there are statistics and there are microaggressions, and there are certain systems in place that specifically oppress me in a very specific way. And so I immediately get a red flag goes up to me if I'm having this type of conversation with a doctor or nurse who's trying to put me at ease. And instead of calling me Black, they'll be like BIPOC or minority. It's no, I'm a Black woman. So I'm Black. Let's not add other things to it. Just I'm Black. And instead of giving me like this like intro to their I'm a safe person, I would rather them just keep it 100 and get to the point.
Okay.
Listen, when I know that a lot of Black patients feel very uncomfortable and scared when they come to have a baby.
Okay.
If something is bothering you, if you don't feel comfortable saying it, write it down.
Oh.
You know what? There's a lot of nurses that come in and out of here. This nurse right here, Nurse Kim, she's my favorite. She has my pager number. She's been here the longest. Might not have the best bedside manner, but she always tells the truth. So if something doesn't feel right, you tell Kim.
Sure.
And then lastly, between you and I, my numbers, but you got to put the work. My numbers for C-sections, complications do not differ based on the race of my patients. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know about your Black friend. I don't need to know a funny quote. I don't need you to tell me that you really like watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air growing up. I don't care about your Black roommate. I don't care if you have a Black child. I want to know whether or not you're going to let me die. Get to the point. Get to the gravy. Like this is life and death stakes, and my baby is at stake. Now, if we're at a casual dinner and like we're coworkers and we're at like a business conference and you want to be like, oh my gosh, I really work with minorities. Like I knew this really fun girl named Monica growing up, and you want to tell me about the sweet potato pie you had that one time in Alabama with your family, fine. But when I am in a sheet with a sports bra on, no underwear, trying to get this baby out, I really don't need to hear the fluff. I want to be assured that you are not going to let me die. Yeah. I want to be assured if I forget the nurse's name, you give me a name that I can say and say, I would like to talk to that person. It might be them. It might be the charge nurse. It might be their favorite nurse, Cam. Who knows? I don't know. But have a plan. And that's something nurses can do on their own. Listen, if we get a mother that seems nervous or seems like she's not asking for anything, whatever you delivered probably didn't land. Because I know I went a whole 10-hour stretch during labor and I wanted water so bad. I wanted ice. I had questions, but I did not want to come off as angry or ungrateful for some reason, which I need to deconstruct. I wanted to be small so they wouldn't kill me. That was the goal. I want them to focus all their energy on just making sure me and my baby survive. So if you think you are giving these speeches and they're landing, but they're still not pressing their call button, then you need to go back to the drawing board. And I think a lot of people don't want to hear that because I think, and again, hopefully this lands and no one gets offended, but I think a lot of these conversations about making sure Black patients feel safe are being had by panels of only white men and women.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is because white people have heard the call. Do something, say something, speak up, have the conversations. And this is our first and best attempt right now. And I think it takes people like you to say, you're not the person to teach it. Let me teach it and use your platform to get to the people. You don't know how to teach it, but you've got the platform and the ears. And I would have never put that together if it wasn't for you. And so I think it's just like a white people syndrome, which by the way, you do a very good white woman. Let me tell you about the sweet potato in my family in Alabama. That's freaking hilarious. I think that's what you're seeing. I know that when I have messed up, that is where it has come from. Not to make any excuses for messing up or to saying that, but to say that the intention behind it was to do well, even though I did it in the wrong way.
And I'm not saying I believe that people can try and make a mistake.
Totally.
I also think that I'm very familiar because of one, I live in the United States. Two, I've worked in hospitals. When a group of 10 or 15 Caucasian women put their minds together and they want to get something done, they get it done. They get it done.
Nothing's stopping them.
So I'm just like, hold up. Y'all send the wildest emails.
Yeah.
Y'all know how to unionize. You know how to get together. You guys know how to get people like fired because you don't like their vibe. So I think you can figure this out too, because there are more hospitals that I've seen and people I've talked to that they have trainings, plans, and protocols for adoptive parents, for when there's a miscarriage, for when they have same-sex couples. Like you guys know how to prepare and to train and to try to make people feel comfortable. You just don't put the effort for Black moms. And I don't know why, because you know how to. You know how to. There are nurses who have never been pregnant, have never had a baby, but they are able through training, make sure two moms having a baby feel comfortable and seen. That's straight.
I was about to say, and themselves.
So if you can figure that out,
if
you can figure that out, you can figure this out. And I think we're just being honest, I think it is considered a very low priority to make Black moms feel safe and seen, because you guys put in that work to make other groups of people feel safe and seen. I just push back a little bit, not on the sentiment, because it's true. So listen, I'm not an expert. I make so many mistakes. I'm just like, I didn't know. I didn't know. I don't have a problem with that. But we have gone past the stories about the Black friend, stories about the Black cousin, the story about the Black child. We just want to know, because we are dying. We are dying. About one Black woman is dying every day in childbirth in the US, and it's preventable. I'm just talking about the preventable cases. One a day. One a day. It is more dangerous to be a Black woman giving birth in America than it is to be a police officer. So we're beyond that. We're beyond we've got to push. We can do it. We can make change. And so I believe in the power of mobilization, and I believe in organizing that I've seen the white community do on projects, on campaigns, and for groups that they find worthy. So whatever we got to do to jumble up the set of whatever to get it to where we see, okay, this Black mother, like these other groups that we have specialized protocol for, we need to make sure our Black women are surviving. Even if it means the first 5 minutes, I just feel uncomfortable. And that might just be a matter of, hey, we are a breastfeeding forward hospital. We are also a hospital that is forward thinking, and we want to prevent Black maternal death. So this is what we can offer you. If there's a certain nurse that you really feel like you have a strong connection with, we can talk to the charge nurse and maybe move around the schedule so she has less cases. So she can come and check on you more. Hey, you're a white nurse when someone likes you. You can feel it. You can feel when a mother has a bond with you. You can just go in, be like, hey, I see that your mom's been here all day. She hasn't gone up to go to the bathroom. I can sit with her and I'll watch her and I'll let anything happen to her. Go use the bathroom, go charge your phone, go stretch your legs. I was devastated when the nurse I had such a strong connection with that I felt like she was watching my back. She was watching my back. She left while I was asleep. And I was like, I just felt, but I didn't know she had called her friend that was coming on shift, told her about me, and she was there. And I woke up and she's like, hey, da, 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 da. And I was like, man, where'd my nurse go? She's no, she called me. I'll never forget you, Caitlin. I'll never forget you. So there are things that you can do that aren't going to feel uncomfortable. It's just going to feel awkward because you haven't done it before. There's nothing awkward about asking a mom, a Black mom that you see sitting there, or an Indigenous mom or an Afro-Latina mom, and being like, hey, I have some notes to do. You can even lie. I have a 10-minute break. I'm just going to sit here with your daughter. Go use the bathroom. Or go check out the cafeteria. I will not move. 9 times out of 10, she's going to get up and use the bathroom. Our support persons, they're not using the bathroom. They're not eating. They're watching us like hawks. We'll get into it. We definitely have to have more conversations, but we gotta keep this moving, because we're going down a path that's very dangerous and very scary. And you have Black women who are doctors and who are nurses themselves that are afraid to give birth in the hospitals they work in.
Ideally, how would you like to see white people mobilize to change this? These conversations are a good starter, but it's kind of basic care. It's what we should be doing
Like, I'm just asking you to do your job.
So that's really not a huge thing to ask, is like to implement what we should already be doing. So ideally, if we could ask anything, what would that look like? How would white people be implementing these things and employing this stuff without being the teachers, without going out there? It's elevating Black voices. I understand that. It doesn't feel like enough, though.
It's not. One thing that you can do that's gold: review the hospitals where you gave birth. If I'm looking for a hospital to have my baby and I pull up a hospital and they have 32 horrible reviews by white women, I'm not going to go there. If the people that have the best birth outcomes aren't going to this facility, I'm not going to this facility. If maybe you had a baby and you work in a corporate office, send an email to the entire office. Hey guys, I just got back from maternity leave. I was able to get 2 hours a day to pump. I was able to take 3 weeks of paid maternity leave, and I also utilize FMLA. then if I'm your coworker, I'm your Black coworker, and you don't want to come up to me and be like, hi, one time at band camp, I had a friend who was Black, we played the violin. You don't have to do all that because you
How
sent
do
the
you
email.
do a white woman so well? I love it.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. But you can just, that is gold. So
Yeah.
then when I, a Black woman, is going to management to say, hey, I would like to take this amount of days off, and they try to come back with me like, we'll see, we're not sure if we can do that. But oh, no, don't worry. Tanya already showed me how to fill out the paperwork. I'm just letting you know that you're about to receive it. That is power. That is power. Power. And then as far as the hospital is concerned, as far as like the nurses and the charge nurses, if they can just, what, I don't know if it'd be a hospital administrator or who, but if you guys are seeing patterns that are having negative impact on Black mothers,
Like what?
have the charge nurses and hospital administrators communicate that to the physicians themselves. So if you see, okay, we get a Black mother that comes in, we're noticing that none of them know that they're being induced, even though they're coming in for an inducement. Maybe this provider isn't having, because I think it's on average, prenatal appointments are 7 minutes shorter for Black mothers. So we're noticing these Black moms coming from this provider, they're not getting that prenatal visit with just like the rundown of the hospital, what's going on. So that's something that we should talk to the charge nurse about. Hey, this person's patient really doesn't know the lowdown. They don't really know what an inducement is. That's very helpful. Maybe your talent, maybe that's not your talent. Maybe your talent is organizing. There are several hospitals in Georgia where there is a car seat program. So you can just say, hey, just let you guys know, if you don't have a car seat, we provide a car seat. It's not reported to the state, you're not in trouble, but we offer car seats. That is gold. You might not feel comfortable going up to people and saying certain things. But if you can promise, if you can self-evaluate and say, okay, I just had eight shifts in the last 2 weeks. Every single mother that I felt a connection to, that I gave extra formula to, extra binkies, extra diapers, extra receiving cloths, they were all white moms. Check that. Why is your favorite mom never a Black mom? Why are you never bonding with the Black family? Just check that and be like, wait a minute. Are you never going to your Black patients when you have extra time because you're nervous? Check that. I'm not asking people to change from day and night, but if you can check that and also encourage your white patients to leave honest reviews about the hospital, you will be in real time helping Black mothers, and it won't cost you a thing.
Yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
hope that helps.
Oh my God. Yes, that was so powerful. And I think there is this unfortunate place in this conversation. And I have been here a number of times over the years as I've been trying to do this work where, and I hope this is a shared experience among white people. I don't know that it is. I don't want to place that burden of education on you for you to educate me, but there is a place where I will never be able to think about these things because our lived experiences are just different. There are things that Black women are going to go into the hospital and experience that me as a white woman, I would never experience those things. And it's very hard for me to try and think about these things. Of course, I think all of us try, but it is so helpful to hear from Black women. This is what you could do better. This is what we need to feel safe because, again, the faster that we get it right, the faster that Black women can stop dying. And it is very unfortunate that the onus is put on your community a lot to educate us in
But,
something
and it
that
doesn't have to
should be
be.
normal.
It doesn't have to be, because I'm not Jewish, but I know what anti-Semitism is.
Yes,
If
but
you
I
want
don't
to
know
I feel like what happens, and this is just what I see,
for sure.
is a lot of providers and and this is I'm primarily thinking of like in social media spaces. White people want to have these conversations about how to deconstruct anti-Blackness and medical racism with each other, with them at the center, with them making it comfortable for them to talk about.
Totally.
Because if you really want to learn and understand, there are so many books that you can buy. There's so many podcasts you can listen to. You can listen to people like Hutchinson Spices. You can listen to me. You can find Black people that are making this content that are also asking you to pay them for their labors through buying their books or whatever that may be. But I think there is a lot of social currency in presenting yourself as if you were doing the work, what in reality, you're just regurgitating facts that you probably heard from another Black creator.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth, because people are able to understand the average white person in my life knows certain things are inappropriate to do towards someone that's a part of the deaf community, but they're not deaf. They don't know anyone who's deaf, but they know. They've done the research. They listen to the information that is being said from that community, and they believe it. They don't question it. But when Black women, when we say, you know what, we're not getting checked up on, we're not being believed, how are you saying it? I have a Black friend who had a great experience. I don't know if that's true. If it was that bad, I would have heard about it. There's this, and it's deep and it's embedded in anti-Blackness and in American culture and society, where white people typically, at least in this space, do not take Black women at our word. You just don't. Yeah. As a collective, you just don't. Because there's plenty of times where I've heard white women are like, I saved my baby's life because I didn't think something was right, and I just asked that doctor or nurse to double check, and something was wrong. And I hear Black women say the same thing, but they're like, I had to go to 3 different hospitals in the same day. And then finally someone just pulled out the ultrasound machine and checked, and something was wrong. And then I had the baby that day. There's this embedded thing where it is socially acceptable to not believe Black women when we say something in real time. Not a week later after you've thought about it, but in real time. And that is not something that that shouldn't be something you need to practice. So I do think it is hard. And I do think change is always hard. And I think learning is always hard. But if a white person who is not Jewish has the capacity to understand anti-Semitism and believe it when a Jewish person says something is anti-Semitic, then you need to believe when a Black person says that something doesn't feel right or something is racist or prejudiced, and just believe it. But a lot of you just don't do that.
Yeah.
You guys will believe what other groups, but you just don't believe that. Specifically in healthcare settings, I see that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you're making me question my own self here. My problem is not believing you. I believe it. And I found this same deficit. It's so funny that you bring up the Jewish example. When the Hamas and October 7th stuff happened, I knew none of that history. I didn't know any of it. And there's things that I'm in Boston, so there's a large Jewish population. A lot of my friends are Jewish. And there began talks about we're not sending our kids to school. And I could not understand why. I was like, I don't get what this has to do with school. And they were like, the school might be bombed because it's Jewish. And there's yet another example of, I could never have in a million years fathomed that. That would have never crossed my mind because
But your gut wasn't, that's the difference. Like when you heard that, you were surprised, but you believed it.
And I believe Black women too. That's why I say.
But a lot of people don't.
Oh,
that's the disconnect. And it was really awesome. I talked about this with Lisa P., who's a Jewish woman. We had this similar conversation on her podcast. She's great. You'd like her. Very classy. And we had the same conversation. And she's, I can relate to you on the level of being treated unfairly. She's like, but I experienced people taking me at my word. And that's the difference. You can be a person that can say, yes, I know that people are still racist or there's racial bias, but then there's people who can understand that there's racism and racial bias. But when someone in real time, a real-time Black person, is not talking about it in theory, but in actual practice, what you just did made me uncomfortable. I feel like you're treating me differently because I'm Black. No. There's no way. You misunderstood. That's not what's happening here. But I will see the same person believe a non-Black person talk anything. It could be homophobia. It could be anti-Semitism. It could be ableism. Not even be there and be like, oh yeah, like that was messed up. Or I am so sorry. Or I wish I was there to support you. So there is this cultural acceptance within the healthcare system in the US that it is okay, socially acceptable, and often encouraged to not take Black patients at their word.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
And that's
see
just
it.
the truth.
For sure. And it's an uncomfortable truth. And I see it. I see it in the hospitals when our team has Black clients. They are treated definitely very different. And I think maybe I am a little different because in that scenario, when you said, I didn't like what you just did, I feel like you're treating me differently because I'm Black. That person in that scenario said, oh my gosh, no, absolutely. My instinct is to say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. What
Right,
part made you feel uncomfortable? I would like to explain why I said it because I definitely did not mean to offend you and I don't
right.
want you to feel uncomfortable. And I also want to learn why it made you feel uncomfortable so I don't do it in the future. Because obviously I was intending to get across a message that did not land right because I
Right.
didn't say something to be offensive, right? So that is wild. That is just, oh
So
my
it's just a
gosh.
matter of not taking people at their word. If I've heard women be like, you know
Or
what,
the
like,
opposite. It's a fact of take them at their when they
take
say
me at my
you
word.
just made me feel unsafe. You should not say no. Oh no, of course you
Yes.
say, wow, I'm so sorry. What made you feel unsafe about it? Help me understand what I did
Yeah.
that made you feel unsafe. When a Black woman says, I think something's wrong with my baby, instead of saying, no, baby, slow down, say, come on back. Let's check on that little baby.
Yeah. What do you have to lose? Your paycheck doesn't get bigger if you see less Black patients. So
Totally.
you really don't have anything to lose. And I think something a motto that I say to myself and I say to healthcare professionals when we're in a comfortable space together is I say, please keep in mind at the root of it, every single person in the labor and delivery room can be replaced with a new hire, except for the mother. No
Totally.
mother, no baby, no billing. Most hospitals in the US are able to pay for their electricity, their insurance, and all of their support staff through billing from labor and delivery. It is the only department in most hospitals that are always in the green. Labor and delivery is always making money. So let's invest just a little bit more empathy in the department that's keeping the lights on.
Literally.
You can make a call in 3 minutes and get a temp nurse to show up. You can't make a call and get a mom to show up and get you that $30,000 billing if it's a C-section or that $11,000 billing if it's a vaginal delivery. So it doesn't make capitalistic sense, social sense, or just scientific sense to treat mothers badly. It
Mhm.
just does. It did not make dollars and cents. But that also shows just how bad the anti-Blackness and the medical racism is because you guys are choosing anti-Blackness and racial bias over money, which a hospital that charges $120 for an ibuprofen,
What an
really think
interesting
about
choice
that.
there.
Really think about that. Do you know you would have women coming from all over the state if you could be a hospital that says, we do not keep white doctors or midwives on staff that have disparities in birth outcomes. You'd have people flocking to that hospital.
Mind
So
up.
it just doesn't make sense to be this way. So that's why it's truly an institutional problem. It's a hospital problem, it's a societal problem, and it's a racial problem. And we really just need to fix it. And it's not as simple as just saying the words or being well intended. You have to want to actively be like, on my watch, I'm not going to let Black women die in this hospital. On my shifts, I'm not going to be, okay, room 9 hasn't dinged for help once. Not on my shift. You actually have to say, you actually have to do the work. And this is not to dismiss anyone from any other communities, right? A lot of us a lot of us have a lot of trauma and pain and hurt. When we talk about maternal death in this country, the country we live in, Black women are dying at extremely concerning numbers. Extremely concerning numbers. And a lot of them are preventable. Most of them are. Serena Williams doesn't even feel safe to have a baby. They almost let her die. She's a national treasure. We got to do better. We just have to.
The women of our country, specifically Black women, deserve better. Like it's just like go into a hospital and come out sicker or more broken than you went in. It's totally unacceptable. And you've said it multiple times throughout the episode is that nowhere else in the hospital or in society do we allow that to happen. When you go into an institution, you come out better with education, you come out smarter with, industrialized working, you come out with more skills. But in birth, particularly just labor and delivery in the hospital. Everywhere else in the hospital, you come out better with a new knee,
Better.
new hip, fixed, healed, no coughing. But in labor and delivery, that is not always the case. And actually, most of the time, you're not coming out better. You're coming out a lot of times worse with birth trauma and stuff. Oh my goodness. Okay, Frances, we did not get to everything that I wanted to get.
No.
Obvious. There's so much more to this conversation than we can
Yes.
have. And I will wrap up here by telling you, you may not feel like an expert, but you are someone that I have learned the most from when it comes to this. And I'm trying. And I think a lot of us are. I am trying to elevate Black voices. I am trying to bring awareness to these topics without trying to step into the role of the teacher because I know I'm not equipped. I know that my role here is not to teach this stuff, but instead to just have a big flag that says, hey, over here, we've got the information. She's going to teach it to you. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Thanks for always being here to gently challenge our beliefs and to gently challenge the things that we think that we know and to stand beside me and hold my hand in challenging the system as we really start to demand better for moms in our country because you're right. It's crazy. It's absolutely wild the maternity stats that we have and I'm excited to just be sharing in this space with you because I think that you're right when you say it takes a very special person to be in this space and someone who's not afraid to be loud and not afraid to have these conversations and not afraid to cause a little bit of a ripple if in the long run it's going to pay off. And I'm here. I'm beside you. I'm behind you. I'll stand in front of you if you ever need some protection. And it truly is an
Thank
honor to
you.
share this space with you and to learn from you. So thank you so much for being here. If people wanted to connect with you after things that you said and they want to learn from you as well, which you guys obviously I just gave a glowing recommendation, but I really cannot recommend Frances enough. If you're not following her on social media, please do. It will give you a great insight, especially if you are white, to what it's like to navigate the healthcare system when you don't look like us, when you're not white, and you are getting care from someone who also doesn't look like you and very well may never have walked any sort of similar path that you have. And I think for me in particular, that has been super powerful. It's made me a better doula. It's made me a better human. It's made me a better advocate. It has made me be able to go into hospitals and truly be able to have these conversations to say, hey, what you did was not right. And here's how you could do it better. I hope to see that in the future from you. Frances, thanks for empowering me. Where can people connect with you if they also want to learn and be empowered by you?
Yes, you can go to TikTok. She's having a baby, and that has all my links, all the things, my TED Talk, free resources for you to learn more. So she's having a baby at TikTok.
I love it. Oh my gosh. All right. I'll see you on the interwebs. And then, of course, because we ran out of time, I'll have to have you back on the show and we can record some other episodes. You've got a lot of really great ideas. And like I say, I'm into these conversations where you're challenging us to think bigger and to think differently and to think at different angles and outside of the box. And let's really rewrite the system for what it looks like for women in our country. So, thank you for being here. All right, you guys, I know that's probably not what you thought today's episode was going to be about, but I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. I think that these really sensitive conversations is where the answer lies to so many of the problems in our country. I think if we are all willing to put our guard down and come together and say, hey, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, but it's going to require us to get uncomfortable and get a little cozy with one another and get to know each other a little bit deeper. I think that we can make some really substantial change in the maternity healthcare system. You guys, I will see you next week. If you are looking for more information, be sure to download the Birth Launch app It is available for Google or iTunes, Apple, so you can get that in any of your app stores for more evidence-based childbirth education and postpartum support delivered straight to your phone. See you in the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly do value this community and I love hanging out with you. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent. It's an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who could use evidence-based information to help them have an informed and confident birth. I'd love to hear what you have to say and read your sweet words. By leaving us a review, you are helping other expectant mamas and their families find the podcast so that we can reduce birth trauma and improve maternity care in the U.S. one birth at a time. If you're interested in joining the Birth Lounge, go to thebirthlounge.com. If you want to connect with me on socials, you can find me at Tranquility by HeHe on all platforms. Until next time, stay educated, stay supported, stay confident. Bye.